My brother secretly recorded me having a breakdown about my infertility struggles, then played it at my baby shower as a funny home video. The room went silent. I smiled, walked to the TV, and inserted my own flash drive. His wife's face went pale when her affair confession started playing. I never thought my own brother would be the person to deliver the most devastating betrayal of my life. Growing up, David and I were incredibly close despite our 3-year age gap. We shared everything from childhood secrets to adult struggles, and I considered him not just my brother but my best friend. That trust made what happened at my baby shower even more shocking and painful than I could have ever imagined. My journey with infertility began 4 years ago when my husband Jake and I started trying to conceive. What we assumed would happen naturally turned into a nightmare of failed attempts, medical consultations, expensive treatments, and emotional roller coasters that tested every aspect of our relationship. The stress of month after month of disappointment, combined with invasive medical procedures and the financial strain of fertility treatments, pushed me to my breaking point multiple times. Throughout this difficult period, David seemed to be one of my strongest supporters. He would call regularly to check on me, offer encouragement during particularly hard days, and even help research treatment options when I felt too overwhelmed to do it myself. When I would break down crying during family gatherings after seeing pregnant relatives or hearing birth announcements, David would be the one to comfort me and remind me not to give up hope. His wife Sarah had gotten pregnant easily with their first child 2 years into my fertility struggles, and I'll admit their pregnancy announcement hit me hard. But David was incredibly sensitive about it, making sure to tell me privately before announcing it to the rest of the family, and he consistently checked in on my emotional state during Sarah's pregnancy. When their daughter Emma was born, David made sure I felt included without putting pressure on me to be around the baby if it was too difficult. The worst breakdown I experienced during this entire ordeal happened about 8 months ago. Jake and I had just received news that our third round of IVF had failed, and we were facing the reality that we might need to consider other options or accept that biological children might not be in our future. The emotional and financial toll of the treatments had been enormous, and we were both questioning whether we could continue. I was at David and Sarah's house that evening, helping them with some home improvement project, when I received a call from my fertility doctor with additional test results that were even more discouraging than we had expected. The doctor explained that my egg quality was declining faster than anticipated and that future treatment success rates would be significantly lower. The conversation lasted about 20 minutes, and by the end of it, I was completely devastated. After hanging up, I completely fell apart. All the grief, frustration, anger, and hopelessness I had been holding back for years came pouring out in an emotional breakdown that lasted nearly an hour. I cried about feeling like my body was betraying me, about the unfairness of watching everyone around me get pregnant effortlessly while I struggled with something that should be natural. I expressed my fears about my marriage suffering under the strain, my guilt about putting Jake through this ordeal, and my terror that I might never become a mother. David held me while I sobbed and listened as I poured out every painful thought and fear I had been carrying. I talked about feeling jealous of pregnant women, about avoiding baby showers and family gatherings because they were too painful, about the financial stress of treatments that might never work. I shared my deepest insecurities about whether I was somehow being punished for something, whether I deserved to be a mother, and whether Jake would eventually leave me for someone who could give him children. The breakdown was one of the most vulnerable moments of my life. I had never expressed these dark thoughts to anyone, not even fully to Jake because I didn't want to burden him further. But with David, I felt safe enough to let out all the pain and fear I had been carrying alone. He reassured me throughout, telling me I was strong, that Jake loved me unconditionally, and that there were still options available to us. What I didn't know was that David had been recording the entire conversation on his phone. While I was pouring my heart out about the most painful experience of my life, he was secretly capturing my breakdown for reasons I couldn't have imagined. The betrayal of that violated trust was something I wouldn't discover until months later, but it would change our relationship forever. 6 months after that conversation, Jake and I received unexpected news that I was pregnant naturally. After years of treatments and disappointment, the pregnancy happened without intervention during a month when we had actually decided to take a break from trying. The news was overwhelming in the best possible way, and we were cautiously optimistic while trying not to get too excited too early. When we made it through the first trimester and felt comfortable sharing the news, our families were incredibly supportive and excited. David seemed genuinely thrilled for us, and he and Sarah immediately began planning ways to help and support us through the pregnancy. They offered to throw us a baby shower, which Jake and I gratefully accepted since we had been so focused on just getting pregnant that we hadn't thought much about preparing for actually having a baby. The baby shower planning seemed to go smoothly. Sarah handled most of the organization while David contributed ideas and helped with setup. They chose a beautiful venue, invited all our friends and family, and seemed to be putting together a lovely celebration. I was touched by their effort and felt grateful to have such supportive family members who wanted to make this milestone special for us. The day of the baby shower was everything I had hoped for. Friends and family gathered to celebrate this long-awaited pregnancy, and the atmosphere was joyful and loving. We played traditional baby shower games, opened gifts, and everyone shared their excitement about the upcoming arrival. I felt surrounded by people who cared about us and supported our journey to parenthood. About halfway through the party, David announced that he had prepared a special surprise for everyone. He explained that he had put together a collection of home videos and photos documenting Jake's and my relationship over the years, creating what he called a Journey to Parenthood presentation. The idea sounded sweet and thoughtful, and everyone gathered around the television excitedly to watch what they expected would be a touching tribute to our relationship. The presentation started normally enough, with photos from our wedding, clips from family gatherings, and sweet moments David had captured over the years. Everyone was enjoying the nostalgic trip through our relationship, and I was feeling emotional about the thoughtfulness of the gesture. Jake was holding my hand as we watched our story unfold on screen, and I felt overwhelmed with gratitude for having such wonderful people in our lives. Then the video took a devastating turn. Suddenly, the screen filled with footage of me during my worst breakdown 8 months earlier. There I was, sobbing uncontrollably and expressing my deepest fears and insecurities about infertility for everyone at the baby shower to see. The audio was clear enough that every painful word I had spoken in what I thought was a private moment was now being broadcast to dozens of friends and family members. The room went completely silent as people realized what they were watching. The footage showed me at my most vulnerable, crying about feeling like a failure as a woman, expressing jealousy toward pregnant friends, and sharing fears about my marriage that I had never intended anyone else to hear. The contrast between the joyful celebration we had been having and the raw pain displayed on screen was jarring and uncomfortable for everyone present. I sat frozen in shock, unable to process what was happening. This moment that was supposed to be one of the happiest of my life was being ruined by the exposure of my darkest and most private thoughts. The betrayal was so unexpected and cruel that I couldn't immediately react. Jake's hand tightened on mine as he realized what David had done, and I could feel his anger building beside me. David seemed to realize that his surprise wasn't having the effect he had intended. He started laughing nervously and making comments about how emotional and dramatic I had been, as if the footage was meant to be humorous rather than deeply personal and painful. He appeared to think that showing my breakdown at my baby shower would be funny because of the contrast between my past despair and current happiness. The reaction from our guests was immediate and visceral. People looked uncomfortable, confused, and increasingly angry as they realized they were witnessing someone's private emotional crisis without consent. Several guests began standing up to leave, clearly feeling that they had been made unwilling participants in something inappropriate and cruel. Others sat in stunned silence, unable to process what they were seeing. I finally found my voice and asked David to turn off the video, but he seemed reluctant to stop his presentation. He made comments about wanting everyone to see the full journey, including the hard parts, as if exposing my private breakdown was somehow inspirational rather than deeply violating. His inability to read the room and understand the cruelty of what he was doing made the situation even more surreal and painful. That's when I realized that if David thought it was appropriate to expose my private moments, perhaps it was time for some exposure to go in the other direction. I had been carrying a secret about David and Sarah's marriage for several months, something I had discovered accidentally and kept to myself out of respect for family relationships. But his willingness to humiliate me publicly changed my perspective on protecting his privacy. 3 months earlier, I had been at their house when Sarah received a phone call that she took in another room, thinking she was alone. I had gone to use the bathroom and overheard her side of a conversation that was clearly with someone she was having an affair with. The conversation was explicit and left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. She was making plans to meet this person and discussing how to hide the affair from David. I had been torn about what to do with this information. Part of me felt that David deserved to know his wife was cheating on him, but another part of me didn't want to be the one to destroy their marriage and break up Emma's family. I decided to mind my own business and hope that either the affair would end naturally or David would discover it himself. I certainly never planned to use the information as ammunition against them. But sitting there watching my most vulnerable moment being displayed for entertainment changed my perspective entirely. If David thought it was acceptable to betray my trust and humiliate me using private information, then perhaps he needed to understand what that felt like from the receiving end. I had come prepared for the possibility that this baby shower might not go as planned, though I never imagined it would be because of David's cruelty. I stood up calmly and walked to the television where David's presentation was still playing my breakdown. I stopped the video and ejected his flash drive, then pulled out my own flash drive that I inserted into the television. I turned to face the room full of guests, and announced that since David seemed to think private moments should be shared publicly, I had some interesting content of my own to contribute to the family video collection. I pressed play on my own flash drive, and the room filled with audio of Sarah's phone conversation from 3 months earlier. I had recorded it on my phone after accidentally overhearing it, initially thinking I might need evidence if I ever decided to tell David about the affair. The recording was crystal clear, and Sarah's voice was easily recognizable as she discussed intimate details of her affair and made plans to deceive her husband. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Sarah's face went completely pale as she realized what was playing, and she began frantically trying to deny that it was her voice or that the conversation meant what it obviously meant. David stood in stunned silence as he heard his wife discussing her affair in explicit detail, including criticism of their marriage and comments about her emotional connection to her affair partner. The guests were now witnessing a complete family meltdown in real time. What had started as a baby shower celebration had devolved into a public revelation of infidelity and betrayal that no one had expected to witness. Several guests immediately began gathering their belongings and leaving, clearly uncomfortable with being present for such personal family drama. David's reaction was even more intense than I had anticipated. The man who had just been laughing at my emotional breakdown was now experiencing his own devastating revelation in front of the same audience. He demanded that Sarah explain the recording, but she had no plausible excuse for the conversation everyone had just heard. The evidence was undeniable, and her affair was now exposed to their entire social circle. I turned off my recording and addressed the room, explaining that I had never intended to share this information publicly but that David's decision to expose my private breakdown had changed my perspective on privacy and respect within our family. I pointed out that everyone has moments they wouldn't want shared publicly, and that using someone's vulnerability against them was a form of cruelty that deserved consequences. The remaining guests began leaving quickly, clearly wanting to escape the family drama that had overtaken what was supposed to be a joyful celebration. As people filed out, many stopped to express their disapproval of David's actions and their support for Jake and me. Several mentioned that they were disgusted by his decision to secretly record and then publicly share my breakdown. Once most of the guests had left, David demanded to know how long I had known about Sarah's affair and why I hadn't told him. I explained that I had discovered it months ago but had chosen to respect their privacy and avoid creating family drama. I told him that his decision to violate my privacy and humiliate me had changed my perspective on protecting information that might hurt him. Sarah attempted to minimize the affair, claiming it was just an emotional connection that hadn't become physical, but the recording made clear that wasn't true. She tried to blame their marriage problems and David's work schedule, but her excuses fell flat given the explicit nature of what everyone had heard. The damage to their relationship was immediate and apparently irreversible. David seemed to realize that his attempt to embarrass me had backfired spectacularly. Not only had he destroyed his own marriage by creating the circumstances that led to the exposure of Sarah's affair, but he had also revealed himself to be someone capable of cruel betrayal of family members. His reputation among our friends and family was permanently damaged by his actions. In the days following the baby shower disaster, the family fallout was extensive. Our parents were horrified by David's behavior and demanded an explanation for why he had recorded my breakdown in the first place. When he couldn't provide a satisfactory answer, they made clear that his actions were unacceptable and had seriously damaged his standing in the family. The revelation of Sarah's affair led to immediate separation and eventual divorce proceedings. David was devastated by the betrayal, but many family members pointed out that he had brought the public humiliation on himself by choosing to violate my privacy first. The affair would have been painful whenever he discovered it, but learning about it in front of dozens of people made the experience far more humiliating. My relationship with David was permanently altered by his betrayal. The brother I had trusted with my deepest vulnerabilities had proven himself willing to use my pain for his own entertainment. Even though my decision to expose Sarah's affair had been reactive and somewhat vindictive, I didn't regret it because it had taught David what it felt like to have private information weaponized against him. The baby shower became a cautionary tale within our extended family about respecting privacy and considering the consequences of cruel actions. David's attempt to embarrass me had destroyed his own marriage, damaged his relationship with his daughter who witnessed the entire incident, and cost him the respect of family and friends who saw his behavior as inexcusably cruel. Jake and I decided to have a small, private celebration with just our closest friends to properly celebrate our pregnancy without the trauma of the original shower. The experience had taught us valuable lessons about trust and the importance of surrounding ourselves with people who truly supported us rather than those who might use our vulnerabilities against us. Looking back, I realized that David's willingness to secretly record my breakdown revealed character flaws that I had previously overlooked. Someone who could plan and execute such a cruel surprise was not the person I thought I knew, and his actions forced me to reevaluate our entire relationship and his role in my life moving forward. The incident also strengthened my relationship with Jake, who was furious about David's betrayal and supportive of my decision to respond with the truth about Sarah's affair. We realized that going through infertility struggles together had prepared us to handle other challenges as a team, and we felt confident that we could protect our growing family from people who might try to hurt us. Our baby was born healthy and happy, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about our family and respected our journey. David was not invited to meet his nephew, and while that decision was painful, It was necessary to protect our peace and establish boundaries with someone who had proven himself untrustworthy during our most vulnerable time. The experience taught me that family betrayal can be the most painful kind because it comes from people who are supposed to love and protect us unconditionally. But it also showed me the importance of standing up for myself and refusing to accept cruel treatment just because it comes from a family member. Sometimes the best response to betrayal is truth, even when that truth is painful for everyone involved.